Snow fell on the observation deck of New Avalon's military outpost as Intelligence Officer Jiwoo Park stared at the distant stars. The colony's 3 moons hung like broken pearls in the night sky, the middle one partially shattered from a hegemony. Bombardment 5 years ago. She sipped her synthetic coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste. Real coffee had become a luxury few remembered since Earth fell. Lieutenant Park, incoming transmission, called the communications officer from behind. Her. Another sighting report. Jiwoo sighed, setting down her mug. Let me guess, the Phantom Warship again. The young officer nodded. 4th one this week. She walked to the console, scrolling through the message. Tales of a massive human warship had been circulating for months now, a vessel that supposedly appeared out of nowhere, devastated hegemony forces and vanished again. Pure fantasy in her assessment. Hope disguised as rumor. File it with the others, she said. Desperate times breed desperate stories. The war had raged for 22 years. The hegemony, a coalition of 3 technologically superior species, the insectoid Vrex, the crystalline Thulians, and the gaseous Morda, had systematically dismantled human resistance across the galaxy. New Avalon was among the last dozen significant human colonies still standing, protected mainly by its remote location rather than military strength. Later that night, as Jiwoo prepared for bed in her sparse quarters, her communication pad buzzed. With an emergency alert, she hurried to the command center where chaos had erupted. Unidentified vessel approaching, announced Colonel Hyunsu, the base commander. Refugee ship, heavily damaged. On the main screen, a civilian transport limped toward the colony, its hull scorched and partially breached. Jiwoo watched as their defense systems scanned for threats, finding none. They're requesting emergency docking, said a technician, claiming they survived a hegemony attack. When the refugees were brought to the medical bay, Jiwoo was assigned to debriefing. Among them was a cargo pilot named Taiho, who clutched a data drive like it contained his soul. I need to see this, he insisted, his hands shaking. Everyone needs to see this. In the secure viewing room, Jiwoo inserted the drive. The footage was grainy, captured from Taiho's ship's external cameras as they fled a mining outpost in the Rigel sector. It showed a standard hegemony patrol, 3 Vrex destroyers known for their ruthless efficiency, discovering the human mining operation. Just watch, Taiho whispered. As the destroyers moved into attack formation, something massive dropped out of hyperspace behind them. The object was clearly a ship, but unlike any human vessel Jiwoo had ever seen. It was enormous, at least 5 times the size of the largest hegemony destroyer, with a sleek predatory design that reminded her of ancient Earth sea creatures. What am I looking at? She asked, leaning forward. They call it Nemesis, Taiho said. The footage showed the mysterious ship engaging the hegemony vessels. What followed defied explanation. The Nemesis moved with impossible agility for its size, evading concentrated fire from all 3 destroyers. It returned fire with weapons Jiwoo couldn't identify, not the standard railguns or plasma cannons of human ships, but beams of light that seemed to fold space itself around the enemy vessels, crushing sections of hull like paper. One Vrex destroyer exploded outright. Another was cut clean in half by what appeared to be a blade of pure energy extending from the Nemesis. The 3rd attempted to flee, only to be disabled by a swarm of small objects, drones or missiles, that attached to its hull and systematically shut down its systems. This has to be faked, Jiwoo said, though she couldn't identify any signs of tampering. It's real, Taiho insisted. The Nemesis saved us, gave us time to escape, and it's human-made. We received a transmission, just 3 words. Humanity stands together. Jiwoo replayed the footage, freezing on a frame that showed the ship's hull. There, barely visible but unmistakable, was an emblem. Earth's old United Nations insignia, modified with a sword striking through stars. By morning, the footage had been reviewed by New Avalon's entire command staff. Colonel Hyunsu called Jiwoo to his office, where he was speaking with a stern-faced woman Jiwoo didn't recognize. The woman wore no insignia, but her authority was palpable. Lieutenant Park, Hyunsu said, this is Director Sunhee from Central Intelligence. Jiwoo straightened. Central Intelligence was the shadow organization coordinating what remained of humanity's resistance efforts. The footage you analyzed, Director Sunhee said without preamble, matches 6 other incidents reported across 3 sectors in the past 2 months. Hegemony communications we've intercepted contain references to what they're calling the human abomination. She placed a data pad on the desk. 3 hours ago, we intercepted this. The pad displayed a hegemony military transmission, partially decoded. The message from a Thulian commander to their high command reported, "Human vessel Nemesis confirmed. Battle Group 7 decimated, requesting immediate reinforcements and new strategic assessment." "They're afraid," Sunhee said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. For the first time since Earth fell, Jiwoo looked between them. "You want me to verify if this ship actually exists?" "More than that," Colonel Hyun-soo said. "We need to know where it came from, what it's capable of, and most importantly, how we can contact it." "This assignment comes directly from the Resistance Council," Sunhee added. "You'll have whatever resources you need. If this nemesis is real, it could change everything." That night, Jiwoo packed her few belongings. Through her window, she could see refugees still arriving from the damaged transport, families embracing, children clutching toys salvaged from their former lives. For the first time in years, she felt something dangerous stirring in her chest. Hope. Her communication pad chimed with mission details. She was to depart on a stealth scout ship at dawn, following the trail of Nemesis sightings backward through time and space. As she prepared for sleep, her quarters shook slightly. Outside, the colony's defense alarm sounded once, then fell silent. Jiwoo rushed to her window, expecting to see the familiar terror of a hegemony scout ship. Instead, a brilliant flash of light illuminated the night sky far above the atmosphere. A battle was underway in orbit. She grabbed her binoculars and focused on the distant flashes. For just a moment, something massive moved against the stars, its silhouette briefly illuminated by the explosion of what could only be a hegemony vessel. Then it was gone, leaving nothing but debris raining through the atmosphere like shooting stars. Jiwoo's pad buzzed with a new message, coordinates for a rendezvous point, far from any charted system. The sender was anonymous, but the message ended with 3 words: "Humanity stands together." Jiwoo's stealth scout ship drifted silently through the asteroid belt of the Kronos system, engines powered down to minimal life support. Through the viewport, massive rocks tumbled slowly in the void, some as large as small moons. This forgotten corner of space had been abandoned early in the war, deemed strategically worthless by both sides. "We're approaching the coordinates," said pilot Junho, his voice low despite the fact that sound couldn't travel in space. "Old habits died hard when you'd spent years hiding from hegemony patrols." Jiwoo nodded, checking her scanner again. "Still, nothing on sensors. Are you sure this is right?" "These are the coordinates Director Sunhee provided," he confirmed, bringing them alongside a particularly massive asteroid nearly 20 kilometers across. "But I'm not seeing any." The ship's communication system suddenly activated on its own, interrupting him. A voice, calm, measured, human, filled the cabin. "Unidentified vessel. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself or be destroyed." Jiwoo exchanged glances with Junho before responding. "This is Lieutenant Jiwoo Park, Intelligence. Division New Avalon Defense Force. We're here on authority of the Resistance Council. Verification code Tango Sierra 79 Omega." There was a long pause. The massive asteroid beside them suddenly had changed. A section of its rocky surface shimmered and disappeared, a holographic disguise deactivating, revealing a massive hangar door built seamlessly into the space rock. Verification. Accepted. Follow the guidance lights to Docking Bay 3. Deviate from the path and defensive systems will engage. Small blue lights appeared, forming a path leading toward the now open hangar. Junho carefully navigated their small craft along the prescribed route. As they entered the massive opening, Jiwoo gasped. What she had expected to be a small outpost was actually an enormous facility carved inside the asteroid itself. Dozens of small craft were docked in various bays, and uniformed personnel moved about in organized patterns. "This shouldn't exist," Junior whispered, Nothing this big has survived the war. After docking, they were met by a security team of 6 soldiers wearing unmarked grey uniforms. Their weapons not standard military issue, but more advanced than anything Jiwoo had seen before. The team escorted them through a series of security checkpoints, each more sophisticated than the last, finally arriving at what appeared to be a command center deep within the asteroid. "Welcome to Bastion," said a lean, silver-haired man waiting for them. Despite his age, perhaps 60, he stood straight, with the unmistakable bearing of a career military officer. "I'm Commander Do-hyun Kim. I understand you're looking for the Nemesis." Jiwoo studied him carefully. "You know about it?" A tight smile crossed his face. "Know about it. Lieutenant Park. I helped build it." Over the next hour, Commander Kim led them through restricted sections of the base, explaining as they walked. The facility, he revealed, had been constructed in secret even before the hegemony arrived in human space. Earth's governments weren't as blind as history now portrays them, he explained, leading them into a vast underground chamber filled with holographic displays and engineering stations. The first hegemony scout ships were detected near Pluto almost 3 years before they officially made contact. A consortium of nations formed Project Nemesis as a contingency. He gestured to a massive holographic display showing detailed schematics of a warship unlike any Jiwoo had ever seen. The design was both beautiful and terrifying, sleek like a predator, with systems and capabilities that seemed impossible. "We knew conventional weapons wouldn't be enough," Do-hyun continued, "so we broke all the rules. Experimental technology, banned research, concepts deemed too dangerous for deployment. Everything went into this ship." Jiwoo circled the hologram, trying to make sense of the specifications. "This can't be right. These power readings would require a contained quantum. Singularity for a power core," Do-hyun finished for her. "The first ever successfully deployed. But that's theoretical technology. Was theoretical, he corrected. Along with the adaptive shield matrix, the phase shift weaponry, and the neural network AI core. He led them deeper into the facility, through a heavily guarded door, and into what appeared to be an ancient war room. Maps and tactical displays covered the walls, most showing hegemony fleet movements. "When Earth fell, everyone assumed the shipyards were destroyed with it," he said, his voice growing quieter. "Including the Nemesis prototype. That was partially intentional. We wanted the enemy to believe they'd eliminated all serious threats. But they didn't," Jiwoo said. "No, the Nemesis was already complete, undergoing its final testing in deep space when the attack came. Rather than return to a losing battle, we made the decision to disappear, to wait, gather intelligence, improve our systems, and strike when the moment was right." "You've been hiding for 20 years?" Junho asked incredulously. Do-hyun's eyes hardened. "Not hiding, preparing." He activated a console, bringing up footage of the Nemesis in action, footage far clearer than what Taiho had provided. The ship moved with impossible grace, its weapons tearing through hegemony defenses as if they were paper. "The Nemesis was designed to be more than a warship," Do-hyun explained. "It's a symbol, a reminder that humanity isn't finished." Jiwoo frowned. "But one ship, no matter how advanced, is still just one ship," Do-hyun nodded, "which is why we need you. The Resistance Council doesn't know the full truth yet, but they soon will. The Nemesis has been gathering hegemony technology, reverse engineering it, improving upon it. We're finally ready to share what we've learned." He pressed his palm against a scanner, opening a hidden door at the back of the room. Beyond it was a chamber containing a single object, a small black cube resting on a pedestal. "This contains everything, the complete schematics for the Nemesis, all our technological advancements and the locations of hidden resource caches we've established throughout contested space. With this, your remaining shipyards can begin constructing vessels that can actually fight back." Jiwoo approached the cube cautiously. "Why now? After all this time?" Do-hyun's expression darkened. "Because the hegemony is building something new, something that could wipe out what remains of humanity in a single strike. We need to move before they complete it." An alarm suddenly blared through the facility, red lights flashing in the corridors. A voice came over the speakers. Proximity. Alert! Hegemony scout vessels detected entering the system. Do-Yun moved with surprising speed for his age, grabbing the cube and pressing it into Ji-Woo's hands. They must have tracked your ship. There's no time to explain more. He led them quickly through a series of corridors to a small hangar containing a sleek shuttle unlike any vessel Ji-Woo had seen before. This will get you back to New Avalon undetected. What about you? Ji-Woo asked. The base? We've prepared for this contingency, he said grimly. The Nemesis is already on its way. It will cover your escape. As if on cue, the asteroid rumbled around them. Through the hangar's force field, Ji-Woo saw a flash of light in the distance. A battle had begun. Lieutenant Park, Do-Yun said as they boarded the shuttle. When you get back, tell the Council one thing: the myth is real, and it's time for humanity to stop running. The shuttle doors sealed, and as they launched into space, Ji-Woo caught her first real glimpse of the Nemesis. As it engaged the Hegemony scouts, beautiful, terrible, and undeniably real, a legend taking physical form before her eyes, bringing with it something long forgotten, the possibility of victory. The shuttle carrying Ji-Woo and the precious data cube emerged from its stealth jump just outside New Avalon's defensive perimeter. 6 patrol ships immediately surrounded them, weapons locked and charging. "We weren't expecting company," came a tense voice over the comm. "Identify yourselves." "Lieutenant Ji-Woo Park returning with critical intelligence," she responded, transmitting her authorization codes. "And I need to speak with the Council immediately." 2 hours later, Ji-Woo stood before the 7 remaining leaders of humanity's resistance, representatives from the last major colonies gathered in New Avalon's secure underground chamber. Director Sun-Hee nodded at her encouragingly as Ji-Woo placed the data cube on the central table. "The Nemesis is real," Ji-Woo stated, her voice echoing in the silent room, "and it's more advanced than anything we've imagined." The cube activated, projecting detailed schematics into the air above the table. The council members stared in disbelief. As Ji-Woo recounted her discovery at Bastion, Commander Do-Yun's revelations and their narrow escape, the oldest council member, Admiral Young-ho, shook his head repeatedly as he studied the projections. "This technology, it's decades beyond our current capabilities," he said. "Even if this ship exists, how do we verify?" A technician burst into the chamber, forgetting protocol in his excitement. "Councillors, we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies. It's breaking through our encryption like it isn't even there. The room's main display activated without anyone touching the controls. Static cleared to reveal the bridge of a starship, sleek, advanced, with stations unlike standard human vessel configurations. At its center stood a woman in a midnight blue uniform with silver insignia, her posture military perfect despite the exhaustion evident in her eyes. "This is Captain Min-jae Kang of the Earth Defense Force vessel Nemesis, broadcasting to all remaining. Human colonies, we are real, we are here, and we are ready to fight." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Questions flew from all directions until Director Sun-Hee silenced the room with a sharp command. On screen, Captain Min-jae waited patiently. "Captain," Sun-Hee said, stepping forward, "if you are who you claim to be, why have you waited until now to reveal yourselves? Humanity has been on the brink of extinction for 2 decades. Min-jae's expression didn't change. "We've been watching, operating in shadow, building strength, and we haven't been idle." She gestured, and the transmission shifted to external footage of the Nemesis engaging 3 hegemony cruisers. The massive warship moved with impossible agility, its weapons tearing through enemy shields as if they weren't there. "This was yesterday," Min-jae continued, as the footage showed the Nemesis disabling the final cruiser without destroying it. "We've been capturing hegemony vessels intact whenever possible, extracting their technology and adapting it to our systems." "That's impossible," Admiral Young-ho said. "Their self-destruct protocols can be bypassed," came a new voice from the transmission. The camera panned to show a command station where a young man with intense eyes operated holographic controls. "Atlas has become quite efficient at infiltrating their systems." "Atlas?" Ji-Woo asked. "Adaptive Tactical Logic and Analysis System," the young officer explained. "The ship's AI core." "Show them, Ensign Ji-ho," Captain Min-jae ordered. The officer nodded, and suddenly a new holographic figure appeared beside him, a featureless humanoid form composed of shifting blue light patterns. "Greetings, Resistance Council," the figure said, its voice neither male nor female but strangely compelling. "I am Atlas, the operational intelligence of the Nemesis." Admiral Young-ho stood sharply. "You allowed an unrestricted AI access to military systems? That violates every protocol established after the Shanghai incident." "Atlas was created before those protocols," Captain Minje replied calmly, "and has evolved considerably beyond its original parameters during our isolation. It has been instrumental to our survival and success." "I understand your concern, Admiral," Atlas said, its form shifting slightly as it spoke. "But I assure you my primary directive remains the preservation and advancement of human civilization. I am not your enemy." Before Young-ho could respond, another technician rushed into the chamber. "Emergency alert. Long-range sensors have detected a massive hegemony fleet formation, at least 30 capital ships plus support vessels. Trajectory. Analysis indicates they're headed for the Arcturus cluster." The color drained from Director Sun-hee's face. "Arcturus houses our largest remaining shipyards and nearly 2 million civilians. If it falls, they'll continue methodically eliminating our remaining strongholds," Minje finished, "just as they've done for 20 years. The Council dissolved into urgent discussion. Evacuation orders, defense preparations, resource allocation for the inevitable refugees. Captain Minje watched silently until they finished. "There is another option," she said quietly. The room fell silent. "We fight," she continued. "Not a desperate last stand, but an actual counterattack. The Nemesis was built for this exact scenario." "One ship against 30? Admiral Young-ho scoffed. "No matter how advanced, the Nemesis is not just a ship." Atlas interrupted, its holographic form expanding to display tactical projections. "It is a weapons platform with capabilities you haven't yet comprehended." The hologram showed a simulation of the Nemesis engaging the hegemony fleet, using strategies and weapons that seemed impossible. Gravity distortion fields that pulled enemy ships into each other, phase-shifted torpedoes that bypassed shields. Entirely, swarms of autonomous combat drones that targeted specific systems with surgical precision. "We've spent years analyzing hegemony tactical patterns," Captain Minje explained. "We know their weaknesses, their blind spots, and most importantly, they don't know what we're capable of." "This is madness," one counselor muttered. "No," Ji-woo said, surprising herself by speaking. "It's our first real chance to fight back." Captain Minje's eyes found Ji-woo's through the transmission. "Lieutenant Park understands. The hegemony expects us to run, to evacuate Arcturus just like we've evacuated dozens of other colonies. They don't expect resistance. Not real resistance." Atlas's hologram shifted again. "We've already transmitted the technical specifications. 4 shield frequency modulators that will give your defense platforms a 43% increase in effectiveness against hegemony weapons. This is just the beginning of what we can offer." The council chamber fell silent as the reality sank in. After years of running and hiding, the prospect of actually fighting back seemed almost foreign. "If we commit to this," Director Sun-hee said, carefully. "What exactly are you proposing, Captain?" Minje's expression hardened. "I'm proposing we stop playing defense. The Nemesis will engage the hegemony fleet at Arcturus, not to buy time for evacuation, but to destroy them. And I want your remaining combat vessels to join us." "And if we fail?" Admiral Young-ho asked. "Then we die fighting instead of running," Minje replied simply. "But we won't fail. For the first time since Earth fell, we have the advantage of surprise. The hegemony doesn't believe we can hurt them. It's time we showed them how wrong they are." The transmission ended shortly after, leaving the council to debate. But as Ji-woo looked around the room, she saw something she hadn't seen in years of war. Determination replacing resignation, and the first genuine spark of hope igniting in weary eyes. The observation deck of humanity's last remaining battle, cruiser the Defiant, offered a chilling view of what awaited them. Ji-woo stood beside Admiral Young-ho as they stared at the tactical display showing the massive hegemony fleet assembling near Proxima Centauri. 37 capital ships and over 100 support vessels surrounding the human colony. "They brought more than intelligence suggested," Young-ho said grimly. "They must have pulled ships from 3 sectors." Ji-woo nodded. They're not taking chances. They know something has changed. The plan had evolved rapidly over the past 72 hours. Rather than waiting for the hegemony to reach Arcturus, Captain Minje had proposed something bolder, intercepting them at Proxima Centauri, where they were gathering their forces. The human resistance had cobbled together every combat-capable ship they could muster. 4 outdated cruisers, 12 fighter squadrons, and the Defiant, their last true warship. It wasn't enough. Everyone knew it. Against such overwhelming force, they were little more than a distraction. But the Nemesis was the wild card. "All ships are in position," reported the tactical officer. "Nemesis confirms ready status." Admiral Young-ho took a deep breath. "Then let's make history. Execute Operation Thunderstrike." Throughout the small human fleet, engines flared to life. The Defiant led the charge, emerging from hiding behind Proxima's 4th moon and accelerating toward the hegemony armada. Almost immediately, alarms blared as enemy vessels detected them and began turning to engage. "They've spotted us," the sensor officer called out, reading weapons charging across their fleet. Jiwoo watched the tactical display as the massive enemy formation shifted with practiced precision. The insectoid Vrex ships moved to the front. Their heavy cruisers were designed for head-on engagements. Behind them, the crystalline Thulian vessels began forming their characteristic lattice formation, preparing to create an overlapping defensive screen. The gaseous Mortar ships, nearly invisible to standard sensors, would be moving to flank positions. It was textbook hegemony tactics, executed flawlessly, precisely as Captain Minje had predicted. "They're launching fighters," the tactical officer reported. "Hundreds of them." "Hold course," Admiral Young-ho ordered. "All ships maintain formation until..." A massive energy surge appeared on their sensors as space itself seemed to tear open directly behind the center of the hegemony formation. The Nemesis emerged from its jump point, not at the edges of the battlefield as expected, but in the very heart of the enemy fleet. "Now that's an entrance," Young-ho whispered. The Nemesis was magnificent, larger than even the footage had suggested, its midnight black hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it. For one breathless moment, both fleets seemed frozen in surprise. Then chaos erupted. The hegemony ships closest to the Nemesis immediately opened fire, their energy weapons converging on the human vessel. But instead of impacting shields, the beams seemed to bend around the Nemesis, some even reflecting back toward their sources. "What are we seeing?" Young-ho demanded. "Phase shift defensive field," Jiwoo explained, remembering the briefing. "It doesn't stop attacks. It redirects them." The Nemesis responded with weapons unlike anything Jiwoo had witnessed before. From its forward section, a beam of concentrated gravitational energy lanced out, catching a Vrex heavy cruiser. Rather than exploding, the enemy vessel crumpled inward as if being crushed by an invisible fist, its hull compressing impossibly before finally rupturing. "Holy stars," breathed the tactical officer. "All ships, engage as planned," Admiral Young-ho ordered, recovering his composure. "Focus on the targets assigned by Atlas." The smaller human fleet accelerated forward, targeting specific hegemony vessels that the Nemesis had marked as priorities. From the massive warship's underbelly, hundreds of small objects suddenly launched. Combat drones the size of shuttles, but moving with the agility of fighters. They swarmed toward the Thulian lattice formation, each one finding gaps in the defensive screen with unnatural precision. On the Defiant's main view screen, they could see the Nemesis itself moving with impossible grace for a vessel its size, pivoting and accelerating in ways that defied conventional physics. 3 Mortar stealth destroyers attempted to surround it, only to be caught in some kind of energy web that made their semi-gaseous hulls suddenly visible and vulnerable. "Atlas is feeding us targeting data," the weapons officer called out. "Their shields are fluctuating at these exact frequencies." The Defiant's outdated weapons suddenly found purchase against hegemony defenses that had previously shrugged them off. Across the battlefield, the same was happening with other human vessels, their weapons precisely timed to exploit momentary weaknesses in enemy shields. "They're adapting," Admiral Young-ho noted with professional admiration. "The AI is finding patterns in their defensive cycles. A massive Vrex dreadnought, easily 4 times the size of the Nemesis, moved to engage the human warship directly. Its forward batteries charged, gathering energy for its primary weapon. Before it could fire, the Nemesis released a swarm of what appeared to be metallic spheres. They accelerated toward the dreadnought, passing through its shields as if they weren't there and attaching to its hull. Phase-shifted penetrators, Jiwoo explained. They exist partially out of normal space until they make contact. The spheres detonated simultaneously, not with conventional explosions, but with precisely calculated antimatter pulses that bypassed the dreadnought's armor entirely. The massive vessel shuddered, its lights flickering as critical systems failed. The center of the battlefield, the Nemesis executed a maneuver that should have torn a lesser ship apart, a tight spiral, while firing its main gravitational lance in a sweeping pattern that caught 5 enemy vessels at once. The hegemony ships, unable to predict the weapon's effect, tried to evade too late. 2 were destroyed outright, the others left drifting and crippled. "They're pulling back," the sensor officer suddenly reported. "Multiple hegemony vessels are breaking formation." On the tactical display, Jiwoo watched as confusion spread through the enemy fleet. Their coordinated attack patterns dissolved into individual ships, trying to establish distance from the Nemesis. Centuries of hegemony military doctrine, built on overwhelming force and superior technology, crumbled in the face of an enemy that defied their understanding. "They're running," Admiral Young-ho said with quiet disbelief. "By all the stars, they're actually retreating, the remaining hegemony." Vessels began jumping away. First the support ships, then the damaged capital ships, and finally the command vessels. Within 20 minutes, the space around Proxima Centauri held only debris and the small human fleet. The Nemesis hung against the backdrop of stars, its hull showing barely a scratch, despite having faced the firepower of an entire armada. As Jiwoo watched, the massive ship slowly turned and moved toward the Defiant, its engines leaving a trail of blue light that seemed to bend reality around it. "Admiral," the communications officer said, "Captain Minje is requesting permission to come aboard." Young-ho nodded, still staring at the viewport. Tell her we'll roll out the finest welcome humanity can still offer." For the first time in 20 years, a hegemony fleet had been defeated, not delayed, not evaded, but genuinely beaten. As news spread throughout the human colonies, people who had known nothing but lost their entire lives struggled to comprehend what victory felt like. The Grand Council chamber on New Avalon hadn't been used for its intended purpose in over a decade. Originally designed to host diplomatic meetings between colony representatives, it had instead become a strategic command center, then a refugee processing facility, and finally a makeshift hospital during the darkest years. Today, for the first time since the war began, it served its original function, a gathering place for humanity's leaders. Representatives from all 12 remaining colonies filled the seats, their faces showing a mixture of hope and disbelief. At the center of the chamber stood Captain Minje Kang, her midnight blue uniform pristine, despite the battle they'd survived 3 days earlier. Beside her, Jiwoo watched as the captain addressed the assembled leaders. The victory at Proxima Centauri was not just a tactical success, Minje said, her voice carrying through the hushed room. It was proof that the hegemony can be beaten. Their technology is not invincible. Their strategies are not perfect. "One battle doesn't win a war," said Governor Hana from the Epsilon colony, though even her skepticism couldn't hide the hope in her voice. "They'll regroup, adapt, come back stronger." Minje nodded. "Of course they will, but for the first time they're afraid. Hegemony communication channels are in chaos. Their command structure is questioning basic assumptions that have guided their military doctrine for centuries." Admiral Young-ho stepped forward, standing beside Minje. "Our intelligence indicates they're pulling forces from 3 sectors to create a response fleet. They're taking this threat seriously." "As they should," Minje said with the ghost of a smile. "But what they don't understand yet is that Proxima Centauri wasn't our endgame. It was just the beginning." She nodded to a technician, and the center of the chamber filled with a holographic display of the Nemesis. The massive ship rotated slowly above them, its systems and components highlighted in sequence. The Nemesis was designed from its inception to be more than a weapon, Minjay explained. It's a blueprint for humanity's future. The hologram zoomed in on various sections of the ship, displaying technology that most in the room couldn't even comprehend. The quantum singularity power, the phase shift defensive systems, the gravitational weapons array. We've spent 20 years perfecting these systems, Minjay continued, testing them in real combat situations against hegemony forces, capturing and reverse engineering their technology and integrating it with our own innovations. Jiwoo noticed that many council members were leaning forward in their seats, eyes fixed on the display with growing understanding. You're suggesting we can build more ships like the Nemesis, Director Sunhee said quietly. Minjay nodded. Not suggesting, promising. She made a subtle gesture, and the hologram shifted to display what looked like massive containers housed in the Nemesis's cargo hold. Seed technology, Minjay explained. Manufacturing templates, specialized fabrication units, raw material processors, everything needed to transform existing shipyards to produce vessels with Nemesis-class capabilities. A murmur spread through the chamber as the implications sank in. Admiral Young-ho raised his hand for silence. The hidden shipyards at Arcturus are still intact, he said. With these specifications, how long would it take to construct another vessel of this class? Before Minjay could answer, the holographic display flickered, and Atlas's glowing form appeared beside the ship schematic. With optimal resource allocation and the implementation of the fabrication systems we've developed, the first new vessel could be operational within 7 months, the AI stated. Several council members flinched at the unexpected appearance, still uncomfortable with the concept of an AI addressing them directly. 7 months, repeated Governor Hana. And the hegemony? We'll almost certainly attack before then, Minjay acknowledged. Which is why we need to be strategic. The Nemesis can't be everywhere at once, but it can target key hegemony supply lines and command structures, disrupting their ability to coordinate a full-scale assault. The hologram shifted, again displaying a map of nearby star systems with hegemony fleet movements highlighted. We've identified 17 critical targets, Atlas continued. By eliminating these in sequence, we can delay any major offensive by approximately 240 days, providing sufficient time for the first new vessels to become operational. The council chamber fell silent as the reality sank in. After 20 years of running, of surviving one day at a time, they were discussing an actual strategy for victory. There's something else you should know, Captain Minjay said into the silence. Something we discovered during our years operating in hegemony space. The hologram shifted to display intercepted communications, tactical orders, battle reports, and strategic assessments from Hegemony Command. They're not united, Minjay explained. The 3 species of the Hegemony, the Vrex, the Thulians, and the Morda, maintain their alliance through mutual benefit and fear, but there are deep divisions in their power structure, particularly between the crystalline Thulians and the gaseous Morda, Atlas added. Their natural states of existence create fundamental philosophical differences that have caused significant internal conflict in recent years. Jiwoo stepped forward. You're suggesting we could exploit these divisions? Precisely, Minjay nodded. Our analysis suggests that a sufficiently devastating loss could fracture their alliance entirely. The following weeks were a blur of activity. The Nemesis's crew worked alongside colonial engineers to implement the seed technology in the Arcturus shipyards. Materials began flowing in from mining outposts that had been abandoned years earlier, now reclaimed under the protection of patrol ships equipped with modified shield frequencies that could withstand hegemony weapons. 3 months after Proxima Centauri, Jiwoo stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed orbital facility above Arcturus, watching as the skeletal frame of humanity's second super warship took shape. Below her, Captain Minjay studied a data tablet, reviewing progress reports. She's ahead of schedule, Minjay noted with satisfaction. Atlas has optimized the construction process beyond our initial projections. Have you decided on a name? Jiwoo asked. Minjay smiled, a rare, genuine expression that transformed her usually serious face. The Resistance Council voted unanimously yesterday. She'll be called Phoenix. They watched in comfortable silence as construction drones swarmed around the massive frame, adding armor plating that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, the same distinctive black as the Nemesis. The hegemony sent peace envoys to New Avalon yesterday, Jiwoo said quietly, offering terms. I heard. The first time in 20 years they've acknowledged humanity as worth negotiating with. The council rejected their offer. Minjae nodded. As they should. We're not fighting for better terms of surrender anymore. We're fighting to win. A flash of light drew their attention as the shipyard's massive fabricators tested the Phoenix's quantum singularity core for the first time. Energy pulsed through conduits along the half-built ship's spine, systems coming online one by one. She'll be beautiful, Jiwoo said. She'll be the second of many, Minjae replied. By this time next year, we'll have a fleet that can take the fight directly to the hegemony homeworlds if necessary. Across human space, the mood had shifted dramatically. Colonies that had been preparing evacuation plans now strengthened their defenses instead. Children who had grown up knowing only retreat and hiding now watched in awe as military recruitment centers reopened. For the first time in a generation, humanity looked to the stars not with fear, but with determination. 6 months after the Battle of Proxima Centauri, the Phoenix launched from the Arcturus shipyards, its systems more advanced even than those of the Nemesis. As it took its place alongside its sister ship, a message was broadcast across all frequencies, deliberately aimed at hegemony listening posts. This is Captain Jiwoo Park of the Earth Defense Force vessel Phoenix. To all hegemony forces, we are no longer prey, we are no longer running, we are coming. Throughout the galaxy, the balance of power had shifted. A myth had become reality, and a broken species had found its strength again. Humanity was ascendant, rising from the ashes of near extinction to reclaim its place among the stars. The end.